BJ Mafia, what's poppin'? Jags fans, we are just a few days away from the free agency period officially opening up, and I'm going to talk about 5 guys here today that I want the Jaguars to sign or at least target, because after a disastrous 2023 season, Trent Baalke is due. He is due for a masterclass. Now, is it probably going to happen? Am I just going to sit here and speculate and live in a fantasy world where the Jaguars make a lot of good moves this offseason? Of course I am, but that's why I'm sitting here not playing general manager. I'm just the guy talking on a camera. But Jags fans, let's actually go ahead and talk about the free agency period and my list of guys that I want the Jaguars to go out there and sign this offseason, or at least make an effort to target this offseason. Now, March 11th through the 13th, in a couple of days here, is when free agency period and the negotiations can begin. March 13th, the 2024 league year begins at 4 p.m. Eastern, which means that trades and teams can officially sign their free agents, and the Jaguars now have $20.9 million in cap space after they had franchise tagged Josh Allen, and after the Jaguars had made a couple of different cuts with guys like Darius Williams, Rayshawn Jenkins, and Folaronzu Fatukasi. I also want to take a moment to recognize and acknowledge the fact that Ezra Cleveland is back on a 3-year, $28.5 million contract. $14.5 million of that is guaranteed. I'm happy with any signing that is going to help protect my franchise quarterback, Mr. Sunshine back there in the pocket, aka William Trevor Lawrence. And also, big shout out to Daniel Thomas getting a 2-year, $4 million contract. Up to $6 million of that can be reached. And Daniel Thomas, DT20, he's a great guy. He's obviously made a huge impact on special teams, sometimes on defense when he gets his snaps, and I've met the guy personally. He's a great dude. I just want to welcome both Ezra Cleveland and Daniel Thomas back to the Jaguars. But now really getting into my list of the free agents that I want the Jaguars to target this offseason, let's get into number 1, starting off with center from the Miami Dolphins, Connor Williams, who's currently 26 years of age. He will be 27 by the time the season rolls around, and I think that you could potentially get this guy at a cheaper, discounted rate just because he is coming off an ACL injury he suffered back in week 12 last season for the Dolphins, and Connor Williams is absolutely one of the best centers out there available on the market. Last season, Connor Williams, in 497 offensive snaps, he only allowed 1 sack, 1 quarterback hit, and 6 quarterback pressures. Now, you do credit a lot of that to Mike McDaniel and the offensive system that they run with the Miami Dolphins, but Connor Williams put together a phenomenal season in those snaps that he played. But let's actually compare those stats that I just listed off of Connor Williams to Luke Fortner, who absolutely regressed back to the means and was just god-awful last season. Luke Fortner in 2023, in 1,163 offensive snaps, allowed 4 sacks, 3 quarterback hits, and 28 quarterback pressures. Let me say that again. 4 sacks, 3 quarterback hits, and 28 QB pressures. That is not going to get the job done in the trenches, in the interior of the offensive line. Not only does that not protect my franchise quarterback, that is not helping the run game as well. Connor Williams, getting back to him, was the 2nd highest graded center in the NFL last season, according to PFF, with an 86.5 grade. And right now, he's projected at $13.5 million annually. I'd be willing to give him that 5-year, $67 million contract like he's projected to get. Like I said, I'm not here to work general manager and to work around the cap. That's not my responsibility, but I'm telling you what the market value is currently at right now. About $13.5 million annually, 5 years, $67 million. Connor Williams from the Miami Dolphins. Now moving into the second guy that I want the Jaguars to sign or target this offseason, let's stick down south with Christian Wilkins, defensive tackle from the Miami Dolphins, who is a former teammate of Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne back at Clemson. And Christian Wilkins was a former first-round pick, I believe 13th overall, from the Clemson Tigers. And Christian Wilkins put together a career-high season in 2023. The Miami Dolphins, he is due for a big payday. In 895 snaps last season, Christian Wilkins had a career season with 58 quarterback pressures, 10 sacks, and 16 quarterback hits. The Jaguars desperately need to upgrade the trenches. They desperately need another presence right there on the inside, as you've got Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker on the edges. You need that interior presence because Devon Hamilton last season, coming off of injury, wasn't as effective. Roy Robertson Harrison was not as effective. You get a solidified guy in there inside the middle like a Christian Wilkins, and life is going to be a lot easier for that front seven, and especially Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen. Last season, Christian Wilkins primarily was lined up over the A and B gap. 645 of his 895 snaps were located there, which was about 72% of them, and you know he's going to be a dominating force in both the run and in the pass game in the trenches. Christian Wilkins right now, when you take a look at his market value, is projected about a 4-year, $80 million contract. That's about $20 million annually. Like I said, not here to play general manager, not here to go over the X's and O's when you talk about the cap space, but if you can find a way to make it work, I would love to upgrade the trenches, help that front seven out. Let's try to bring Christian Wilkins in here. Now, sticking with the defensive side of the ball, I'm going to bring in a guy that I really want to bring here to Jacksonville. Chanty Gardner-Johnson, former 4th-round pick and former Florida Gator. I think Chanty Gardner-Johnson would be a terrific, low-risk, high-value reward guy to get here into Jacksonville. I believe he's from Cocoa Beach, if I'm not mistaken. You bring the Florida boy back home, and I think that this would be a home run, low-risk, high-reward type of situation for the Jaguars. When you take a look at Chanty Gardner-Johnson, he's a guy who's only appeared in 6 games last season for the Detroit Lions. 3 of those were in the regular season, and then the other 3 in the postseason when the Lions made their postseason run. He did suffer that pectoral injury, which is what sidelined him for a majority of the season, but I think Chanty Gardner-Johnson is a guy who's extremely versatile. You can line him up at free safety, you can put him in the nickel, you can line him down in the box. He's played outside a corner. He can do a lot of different great things, and I think he is going to be a very good player, especially if you can get him here to Jacksonville, especially because he won't be on too much of an expensive contract when you take a look at the fact that he has not had a big payday yet, and he's still coming off of injury, really. So you have a low risk, high reward type of situation. I don't know how many times I need to say it. I would love to get Chanty Gardner-Johnson here to Jacksonville. And when you take a look at Chanty Gardner-Johnson and what he did in his last fully healthy season, which was back in 2022 with the Philadelphia Eagles, in 729 snaps, he had 56 tackles. He did allow 33 receptions on 42 tackles, but he also registered 6 interceptions, and he was only penalized 2 times. So Chanty Gardner-Johnson, would love to get him here. I'm not exactly sure what his market value would be, but I think a 2-year, $16 million contract is extremely reasonable. The Jaguars still have a void at the nickel and at the safety position. I would love to bring him here to Jacksonville. Now moving into the 4th guy that I think the Jaguars should sign or target this offseason. This is another low-risk, high-reward type of guy. Let's bring in Jeff Okudah from the Atlanta Falcons, a guy who's very familiar with Jaguars' new defensive coordinator Ryan Nielsen in that system. He was a former 1st-round pick, the number 3 overall pick back in 2020. Of course, he was 1A and 1B with CJ Henderson back in that class, and us Jags fans know all too well about that. Jeff Okudah, I think honestly, he has not had the career that many have thought he was going to have as he was projected out of Ohio State, but he still has a lot of upside at 25 years of age, and he arguably had the best season of his career last year in 2023 with the Atlanta Falcons. So in 13 games last season for Atlanta, he recorded 596 snaps. He was targeted 52 times, only allowed 32 receptions, which is 61.5% completion percentage when targeted. He had 3 passes deflected and had a 92.9 NFL passer rating when targeted. And with Jeff Okudah, he's a guy who's a low-risk, high-reward type of situation on the outside, across the side from Tyson Campbell. And excuse me, Agnew's just interrupting me, so say something to the people real quick. He said, keep Agnew in Jacksonville is what he said. All right, leave me alone. But getting back to Jeff Okudah, I just think his talent and his age, he's got so much room for progression, and you really saw him starting to put it together last season. I think playing opposite side Tyson Campbell when he's healthy and being in another year of Ryan Nielsen's system, I think could tremendously benefit him. Like I said, low risk, high reward type of situation. He's projected right now $14.7 million annually, a 4-year, $59 million contract. I'm not sure if the Jaguars would be willing to fork that out for him, but I do think it's an interesting situation. Jeff Okudah would be one that I'd be willing to at least target this offseason. Now getting into the last guy the Jaguars should target or sign this offseason, give me former 4th-round pick back in 2020, wide receiver from the Buffalo Bills from the University of Central Florida, Gabriel Davis. Now I think Gabe Davis would be a tremendous fit for this Jaguars team. I could see him having a Christian Kirk type of hierarchy where you see him at 24, 25 years of age, has not put together a 1,000-yard season with Josh Allen and the Bills because because Stephon Diggs was opposite side of him. But the great thing about Gabe Davis is his ability to stretch the field, to have that vertical threat. And of course, I would love to have Calvin Ridley back, but if you can get Gabe Davis at a premium, at a good deal, a guy who's going to have a nice, solid, team-friendly contract, and you can play him opposite side of Zay Jones, keep Christian Kirk in the slot, I think that is a legitimate wide receiver on the outside that you can go get. And while I don't believe that Gabe Davis is a true number one, I do think at a team market value where you could get him for about 4 years, $54 million, $13.6 million annually at a young age, I do think with his talent and his capabilities playing on the outside, you can keep Christian Kirk in the slot, you can keep Zay Jones on the outside, and you can still go out there and draft another weapon, preferably Brian Thomas Jr. at 17. The Jaguars can go out there and get a guy like Gabriel Davis, who put together in 17 games last year a pretty good season for the Buffalo Bills. He was targeted 78 times, recorded 45 receptions for 746 yards and 7 touchdowns. He only had 4 drops, and he also had a 50% contested catch rate, which is actually a very good number. I would be a big fan of signing Gabe Davis. I think that would be a great signing. Is he a wide receiver one? No, he's not. But nonetheless, I think that would be a good signing to bring him here to Jacksonville. And before I wrap up this video, let me give you guys one little wild card. I would love to sign Cheetahbayer, a cornerback from the Cincinnati Bengals. I think that this would be a great signing. Opposite side, Tyson Campbell. I don't need to get into too many details. Just know I think Cheetahbayer is actually probably realistically going to be the guy that Trent Baalke and this team addresses in free agency. That's probably going to be our big signing. I think Cheetahbayer will also end up coming to Jacksonville at some point this offseason. But Jags fans, I want to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments down below about what you guys made about my list when I talked about my 5 guys like Connor Williams, Christian Wilkins, Chanty Gardner Johnson, Jeff Okudah, and Gabriel Davis. Let me know what you think about that list, and also give me a couple of guys that you want the Jaguars to go out there and try to sign this offseason. Try to keep it a little bit realistic, but still let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Jags fans, if you guys enjoyed today's video, make sure you guys go ahead and drop me a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe bell to stay tuned for more Jaguars content that I do here on YouTube. And make sure you guys also go ahead and follow me on my socials, especially on Twitter. I'm very active and I'm on there every single day. The link tree will be in the description down below so that you guys can go ahead and check that out. But Jags fans, thanks again for sticking around throughout the whole video. Brett James, aka BJ, I'm out, y'all. And like always, let's go Jags.